Welcome to Screw the Commute, the entrepreneurial podcast dedicated to getting you out of the car and into the money, with your host, lifelong entrepreneur and multimillionaire, Tom Antion.
Hey everybody, it's Tom here with episode 401 of Screw the Commute podcast. I'm here with my new Aussie friend, Rael Bricker. He's got over 30 years as an entrepreneur, and he delivers a series of dynamic tasks on building businesses by thinking outside the square. We usually say the box, but he says the square. We'll bring him on in a minute. Hope you didn't miss episode 400. That was our big milestone episode where I just went over a lot of principles I've learned after 44 years in formal business and really another quite a few years, 10 years since I was a little kid doing side hustles. So most of them you can implement immediately, and it really will change the course of your business. So check that out, episode 400. Anytime you want to get to an episode, a back episode of Screw the Commute, you put screwthecommute.com/ and then the episode number. That was 400. Now, how would you like to hear your own voice here on Screw the Commute? Well, if the show has helped you out at all in your business or given you ideas to help you start a business, we want to hear about it. Visit screwthecommute.com and look for a little blue sidebar that says send a voicemail. Click on it, talk into your phone or computer, and tell me how the show has helped you. Also put your website on there so you'll get a big shout out on a future episode of Screw the Commute. Now, we give you a free gift for listening to the show. It's an ebook that's on how to automate your business. It's the ebook that I wrote on all the tips and tricks I've used to handle up to 150,000 subscribers and 40,000 customers without pulling my hair out. And just one of the tips in this book, we actually figured it out a couple years ago, saved me 7.5 million keystrokes over the years. Definitely saved me carpal tunnel syndrome. So grab that book at screwthecommute.com/automate free, screwthecommute.com/automate free. And while you're over there, pick up a copy of our podcast app at screwthecommute.com/app. That's APP. You can put us on your cell phone and tablet and take us with you on the road. All right, I know people are still freaking out with the pandemic. You know, the kids are in school one day, not in the next day. You know, if they go to school, I don't know, they're going to burst into flames or something. I don't know, the crazy stuff they're trying to do to you nowadays. But myself and my students don't worry about that because we have the skill to sell from home already. I've been doing it since the commercial internet started in 1994, been teaching it for 23 years. And my students and I don't worry about these kinds of things. And it's not that I don't feel for what's going on out there, but it doesn't have to be in your future again. If you learn how to sell from home, you can not worry about pandemics and you can have a great income coming in and not worry where the next paycheck's coming from. Now, I formalized my training in the form of a school. It's the only licensed dedicated internet marketing school in the country, probably the world. It's at imtcva.org. It's certified to operate by SCHEV, the State Council on Higher Education in Virginia, USA, I might add. And you don't have to be in Virginia, though. It's actually good quality distance learning. And it's funny now, all these four-year colleges that have been ripping students off for years are now all of a sudden, we're distance learning now. Like in 2 days, they put together a course. Well, we've been doing it for 13 years and have rave reviews from all our students. And you can be making money before you even graduate because this skill is in high demand by every single business on earth. So check that out at imtcva.org. And a little later, I'll show you how you can get a scholarship to the school if you're in my mentor program. All right, let's get to the main event. Rael Bricker, he's a collector of experiences and observations. I mean, his experiences range from, this one gets me, working like, I don't know, in hell, 6,000 feet underground. I never heard of that, such a thing. He's built a education business himself with 6 campuses and 4,000 students. I mean, he's done all kinds of stuff, but he wanted me to boil it down for the people listening to this show. He wrote a book, and we'll be talking about that here, but he says, listen, business is simple. Business is not complicated. Dive in and adjust your course while you're moving. So, Rael, are you ready to screw the commute?
Yes, I'm ready and I'm here.
All right.
Yes.
Well, great meeting you, man. You're a friend of a buddy, another Aussie buddy of mine, and you guys got a podcast going. I'm going to try to get on that one of these days. And tell everybody what you're doing now, and then we'll take you back to see how you climbed up to get to where you are today.
Thanks, Tom, and great to be here this morning. It is the vagaries of time change are interesting because it's 6 a.m. for me here in
Yikes.
Australia.
Yeah, I'm not a morning person. It's 5 o'clock Eastern time here in the USA. So I'm wide awake, but thanks for getting up early to get on the show.
No problem at all. So currently I run a number of businesses. One of those is as a professional speaker, and that started about 7 years ago, actually talking to people about how to create excellence in their businesses. But that came out of another business. So I 20 years ago, I left the venture capital environment, the craziness of venture capital just after the crash in 2000, at the end of 2000, 2001, when the markets crashed. And I went out on my own and had no idea what I was really going to do, but I kind of knew I was going to help some companies. And I started helping them raise small amounts of money from investors. They then said, "Oh, we'd love some loans." And I went, "Well, I don't know how to get loans, but I'll find out." And so I found out that in Australia, I had to be something called a mortgage broker or finance broker. And I started that business. And then they said, "That was great. Can you do our home loans now and our mortgages for our investment properties?" So we did that too. And recently we clocked through in that same business that I still own, around 3 billion, that's with a B, in mortgages. About 7 years ago, I was asked by the mortgage industry to talk at their conference on how to build a mortgage business. And I had such fun doing that. I thought, well, why can't we apply those skills to every other business? And so therefore was born railbricker.com in my speaking and coaching and mentoring.
Well, let me get this straight. So somebody just asked you to do something. You went and figured out how to do it and filled their need. I mean, how much cleaner can it get to get a business started? I mean, that's great. So people for years try to figure out what they're going to do, but you just, hey, the market said, give me this, and you gave it to them.
Yeah, pretty much so. I mean, they're all related. It was about how to grow business. And I was obviously focused on the finance aspects at the time. And so, yeah, that's all I did is I went out and said, well, how do I get these people loans? And I guess that's the approach I've taken through 30 odd years of business is, you don't always have to spend life. A lot of people spend life, and I hear them saying, I've been researching this business for 3 years. The world is very different to 3 years ago. And so, that was where that philosophy came in of just diving in and adjusting your course while you're moving, because sometimes you have to go, yes, the research is incomplete. I'm not 100% sure, but let's try it. As your podcast says, screw the commute. Well, Richard Branson said, screw it, let's do it. So just do it. It's exactly that. It's about going and saying, yeah, we think there's an opportunity. Let's try it. What's the worst thing that can happen is it fails and we do something else.
Yeah. And of course, I teach people to, be careful with your money. A lot of the startups during the dot-com bubble, they were just throwing millions of dollars at kids that were wet behind the ears and buying pool tables and massage chairs instead of running a business. That's part of why it failed. But yeah, you just you dive in, which is the title of your book, right?
Yep, correct.
Tell them about the book.
So the book came out of the talk. It initially started when I spoke at the mortgage industry, and I thought, geez, that was fun. I got on the plane on the way back to Perth, and so put Perth into a context where it is. It's on the west coast of Australia. It is a big country, so from Perth to Brisbane is a New York, LA distance. So that would sort of put into context the size of the country. We're in a 2 million people city on the west coast of Australia. So I spoke in Melbourne at this conference. I got on the plane. I had an iPad with me, and I thought, let me document some of my thoughts. And that's where I started writing this book. It was just spur of the moment. I was on the plane, whiskey in hand, and I wrote 2,000 words on the flight home. And then for the next 9 months, I got up at 6 in the morning and wrote for half an hour every day. And then I suffered from imposter syndrome. I went, no one wants to know my story. So I put it away. I put it away for about 2.5 years
Oh my
until,
goodness.
I'd started professionally speaking. I'd been going around the world consulting to businesses, and I did nothing with the book. And then I was in South Africa working at another company and had a dinner with a cousin of mine, and who said to me, oh, yes, his wife has just left her job at 25 years at a book business. So she was the head buyer, and she'd gone out on her own as a publisher. And I said, well, let me send her my manuscript and find out what she says. And I sent it to her, and she said, write 10,000 more words and you got a book. So that was what happened in 2017. I sat down, I wrote 10,000 more words, sent it to her. She did all her magic. And in the 18th of May, 2018, it went live on all the good, sites, Amazon, Booktopia, etc.
Wow, wow. Wow, gee, now, hopefully the next one won't take that long.
No, the next two are in production,
Aha,
actually.
2,
So
there you go.
yeah, no, yeah. So the first of those has actually been in progress for about 2 years now, but its working title is "If Culture Rarely Ate Strategy for Breakfast, What's for Dinner?" And it's I have a passion for generating rich and robust cultures in businesses. A lot of my clients, a lot of the time I spend on stage is all about culture. And what I did is I decided that I had to take my own experience. Although I've got 30 years of entrepreneurial experience, it's based around 2 continents. And I needed to take that broader. And so I took advice from a great speaker friend of mine who lives in Singapore. And I went out and interviewed companies. And my target is 100 interviews. COVID got a little bit in the way of that. But I'm at 87 so far over 25 countries. And those interviews will become that book, which is talking about what makes rich and robust cultures and conversely what makes toxic culture in organizations. So that's the second book project. The third is an ebook that I'm about halfway through, hopefully have it out by early March 2021. And that is a book called Building Excellence. It's one of my passions. I'm known as the business excellence guy in speaking circuits, and I love the building blocks that make up business excellence. And what can you do as a small business, as an entrepreneur? You don't need to do the big bucks. You don't need to spend the millions. And as you said, going on the pool tables and the bean bags and the fancy coffee machines.
Right.
But what can you do on a basic business level to look at components? And my components are not the traditional components that we look at. It's the things that have made me successful in small business, and how do we translate those into other people's businesses? And so that ebook will be out sometime in March 2021.
That's only a couple of weeks from now, so good.
That's only a couple of
Awesome.
weeks from now. Yeah.
I like the speed now compared to the first book because, things do change so rapidly. I heard one guy say, don't worry if your kids don't know what they want to be when they grow up, because it probably hasn't been invented yet.
Oh, absolutely. And in fact, a lot of my corporate work with companies is saying to them exactly that, is you've got staff, don't lose your staff. So there's been this whole view in the world that, and particularly small businesses, they want to employ someone and they go, oh yeah, but I don't know if I'll need this person's skills in 2 or 3 years' time. Well, it's actually cheaper for you as a company to retrain that person. And what are you going to retrain them as? Well, we don't know, because half those jobs haven't been invented.
Mm-hmm.
But so what? It goes back to philosophically, just dive in and then adjust your course as you move along.
Yeah, and you'll be lucky if they're there in 3 years anyway. So
yeah, well, if they're millennials, probably not.
Yeah, exactly, right. So let's take you back. Were you an entrepreneurial kid, or how did you come up through the system?
Yeah, I was pretty much an entrepreneurial kid. I started my first business at the age of about 15. So I started working. I needed to work. My parents couldn't afford couldn't afford much. And so I started working just after the age of 14.
Mm-hmm.
I had a sort of interest and passion for electronics, and and radio. Actually, I became a amateur radio nut at the time.
Oh, I just got my. Did you get licensed and all that stuff?
Yeah. So I had my license in South Africa. I had a ZS6 Alpha Delta Alpha, and then I moved to Australia, and I ended up with Victor Kilo 6 Alpha Delta Alpha. That sounds really technical for this time of the morning, but I gave it up because the internet and the world was just moving. I didn't have the space to put up antenna here at home, and so I sort of gave it up about 15, 18 years ago. But my interest in that got me a job at a small electronics shop in downtown Johannesburg that sold basic electronic components and kits for building things, and it sold radio equipment. And so I got to play with some of the best equipment, which was pretty cool.
So you're saying you're from South Africa, and
I'm from South Africa. I was born in a little town off the coast and grew up most of my life in Johannesburg.
Okay, got it.
And so I got this job, and people would come in and buy car stereos in those days from the shop. We also sold car stereos, and then they'd go, well, do you know somebody who can install them? So in my absolute belief in myself, I went, yes, sure, I can do that.
Okay, dive in,
and
right?
that's, of course, how you start a business.
You dove in.
I realized after stuffing a few of them up that I went, yeah, anything that has to do with my hands and make me money, probably not the way I should be going in business. I should be using my brain and not my hands. And I have an immense respect for people who can use their hands. I love my time out is doing woodwork and constructing things at home, but none of it would pass the test of being a proper tradesman.
Right, I know that feeling, yeah.
But that said, it's my time out, it's my release. And so, so that was my first business when I was 15. At the age of 18, I bought a mobile discotheque and I ran parties. There was a lot more work than it is today, where you have this tiny little mixing desk that plugs into a computer and two little speakers that chuck out thousands of watts. We had, heavy speaker boxes and a big 2 turntable set. We had about 7 speakers or 8 speakers we used to drag around. My son, who's 16 now and loves music, has actually inherited my vinyl collection from those days, where I have over 1,000, over 1,007 singles from the 80s.
Wow, yeah. So I had a nightclub. I had a nightclub in the 80s, and we had continuous music. So we had bands, but the minute the band took a break, the DJ was playing, and then the band would start up, boom. So it was continuous music playing. But yeah, I have a lot of the records from back those days. But most kids wouldn't even know what it is if they saw one.
Oh, absolutely. And that was, they'd been sitting in the garage, in 2 different houses here in Australia. And then my son has this massive interest in music, and he plays in a band and all sorts of things. And he just has taken to the vinyl. But yeah, so that was sort of my next journey. And I ended up managing 1 or 2 small startup bands in South Africa. Ended up very involved in the music scene there, became president of the university radio station. So met some really cool, interesting people along the way. But my first real business that made money started 6 months after I got married. And I use that term because I arrived home 6 months after being married. Said,
which term? Getting married?
My good paying job. I'm going to give up my good paying job and go out on my own and live on the edge. And she said, sure, let's do it. And that was we just celebrated our 31st wedding anniversary. So we've managed all those ups and downs of entrepreneurship.
Good for you. But we skipped a little area there from the DJ, working the DJ stuff. I mean, did you go to college? Did you, what regular job did you chuck to get start your own business?
Okay, so there were a few things in there. I went to university. I went to college. I did an undergrad degree in electrical engineering. Again, my parents couldn't afford to send me to university. I got a scholarship from a company called Anglo American, which was the biggest mining house in South Africa at the time. And that's how I ended up 6,000 foot underground.
Because there we go.
South Africa has deep level mining. So gold, we worked on, there are gold mines there that are 4 kilometers deep. But the mine I worked on was called Vaal Reefs, and the particular shaft I worked on was about 6,300 feet deep, which they'd call 63 level. That's how they term it in mining terms.
Wow.
It has a rock temperature of about 30 something Celsius, so in the 90s at that level. And
6,000 feet below the ground, it's 90 degrees.
Yeah, correct. The rock gets hotter as you go down. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, because it gets, I guess the world gets cooler as you go up, so I guess it makes sense. I was in a deep mine once, but in Virginia, but we didn't go 6,000 feet. I know that.
Yeah, so it was an interesting time of my life. I was 21. I knew at the time something interesting. I knew that I didn't want to be in the corporation. I didn't really know what my direction was, but being in a massive corporation like that, and then 19 months after joining the mine, I got an opportunity to move back to Johannesburg to the Anglo-American head office. And I was in this department in head office, and I was a grade C4 engineer. Now, why is that important? It's because as a grade C employee, I parked in the third parking lot away from the office. But if I was the next level employee, I would have parked in the second parking lot away from the office. And I knew then that was never going to be my life. Like, I knew that for waiting for the corner office and the promotion and leaving at 5:02 in the afternoon was just not my life. And so a number of months after that, I got an opportunity to go to business school to do an MBA. And an MBA is not a requirement for entrepreneurship. I have to say that an MBA is a great tool for teaching you how to be a corporate employee. I went to do the MBA because I was interested in finding out everything I could about various aspects of business. And that's what I treated my MBA for. I didn't treat it like a pass to becoming an entrepreneur.
Yeah, we tease on our show about, MBAs are competing for jobs at the coffee shop, Starbucks.
Yeah. And it had nothing to do with that. And so I think the MBA, and I did my MBA in 1988. And yes, I mean, I'm a bit crazy. I did 2 master's degrees at the same time. So I did my MBA and a master's in engineering, in software engineering. So I kind of perceived that software was the way to go. And I thought maybe let's do a master's in that area. And that's what I did. I finished the MBA program and joined a small software house, but in the marketing role. So I actually already was starting to shift out of the technical background. I joined a technical software business, but in a marketing business development role, and stayed there until mid 1990, just after I'd got married. And that was when I decided to go out on my own. And here is the flaw in that theory, but it's a funny flaw. My business partner and I were 26-year-old MBA graduates, and we thought we could teach the world how to run their businesses when we'd never run a business. And so, but we had absolute total belief in ourselves. And, your listeners are entrepreneurs and people wanting to be in business, wanting to make the leap of faith to get out of their corporate jobs and go out there. I think the biggest thing that actually kept me going for 30 plus years is an absolute belief in self and a view that I never got down. That I would say, well, okay, it didn't work. Let's just adjust the course. Let's do something else. And so that's exactly what happened. We started out with this high hopes of a management consultancy. We both could speak. We both knew how to stand up on stage. One of the things the MBA did teach us was the ability to, present at a corporate level. And so that was quite one of the skill sets. And yeah, that's what we did. So we went out, we started this business, we pitched it to a whole lot of companies, and we surprisingly actually won some work, which is probably the most surprising thing in my life. We won some work. It was a good contract for us. And then 3 months later, that company decided to do an internal restructure and canceled our contract. And so we were sitting around going, what should we do now? We've left our corporate jobs. We've borrowed money to start the business. What do we do now? And then an organization that was called the Institute of Marketing Management at the time in South Africa started offering and put South Africa into context. This is 6 months after Nelson Mandela's release from jail. It was 6 months after the unbanning of the African National Congress, and about 3 years before the first democratic elections in South Africa. So a massive period of transition in South Africa. This Institute of Marketing Management said to us, look, you guys are well qualified. You can teach marketing. You've both been in marketing. Why don't you run our diploma course? Because it's an alternative to university for those kids, and particularly the majority of the South African population who had, the Black population in South Africa had really poor schooling. And so they couldn't get into university or formal education systems. And so the Institute said to us, why don't you start running our program, which is a 3-year program, but run it over 4 years to get them time to catch up. And why don't you start that? And so that's what we did. We dived in and started it. We rented some premises. We started it and had 20 students by the end of 1990. So to start a course in 1991. So yeah, it's just about, that's how we got into the education business. But then we were in the right place at the right time. I have I admit that timing is everything. There was this massive hunger for education amongst the population in South Africa, and for an education that would get them jobs. And so that was how we started the education business. And then we found innovative ways to advertise that didn't cost us a lot of money and grew rapidly, and then had the balls to go out there and go, let's open another campus. And, within 5 years had 6 campuses running.
Wow. That is amazing. So we got to take a brief sponsor break. When we come back, we'll get Rael. And by the way, his name is spelled Rael, but it's pronounced Rael. We'll get him to tell us about his podcast, how he got started in that, and what it's doing for his business. So folks, about 23 years ago, I kind of turned the internet marketing guru world on its head, in that people like me were charging $50,000 or $100,000 up front to teach you what they knew about internet marketing for small business. And I knew a lot of these people. You give them $50,000 up front, they'd be hiding out in Brisbane or South Africa somewhere, because they'd never help you. So I said, that's not fair to small business. I'm going to turn this on its head. So I charged an entry fee that was much smaller, and then I tied myself to your success. So for me to get my $50,000, you had to make $200,000. Well, people really liked this idea because they knew I wouldn't disappear on them. And 1,700 plus students later, and about 23 years, it's still going strong. It's the longest running, most unique, and most powerful and successful mentor program ever in the field of internet marketing. And I have no trouble saying that, because I dare people to put their program up against mine, and nobody has the guts to do it, because line for line, we give so much value. I'm a total fanatic about your success. I mean, you have an immersion weekend at the Internet Marketing Training Center. One of Rael's partners has been here before. We have our own TV studio here where we shoot marketing videos for you. All our work with you is one-on-one. You're not lumped in with people more advanced or less advanced than you. We'll even take over your computer screen, show you where to click, where not to click, what to do. We teach you strategy. And then you also get a scholarship to my school I was telling you about earlier. So you can either use it yourself for extra training or gift it to someone. We had one guy join my mentor program and then gift it to his daughter, and he had spent $80,000 US dollars on her crappy education, not to mention she was out of the workforce for 4 years. That's another at least $200,000. And she was working a crappy job. Well, after he gifted the school to her, within 1 month, she was making $1,000 a month on the side. 3 months, she was making $3,000. In 4 months, she was making $6,000 a month as a side hustle, and hadn't even graduated yet. So this is stuff that every small business needs. So what we teach you, you can use for yourself in your own business. You can work for somebody else, or both. So it's very, very powerful. So check it out at greatinternetmarketingtraining.com. That's the mentor program. And I'm very accessible, no high pressure here. If you want to just talk about your potential future online, and young people in your lives online, I'll tell you what, it's the best legacy gift you could ever give to a nephew, niece, grandchild, your own kids, so that they're not coming home and living in your basement because they can't find work. So check it out, greatinternetmarketingtraining.com. All right, let's get back to the main event. Rael Bricker is here. He's my new Aussie friend, and he's Aussie now. I don't know if he's really Aussie or South African living in Aussie. We'll ask him about it, but he's got a podcast based on excellence, and I really love the term excellence. You've heard me talk about it a lot on the show here, but tell him about the new podcast. And are you an Australian citizen now, or dual, or what is the deal with your citizenship?
So thank you, Tom. The answer is I chose to become an Australian. I'm an Australian citizen. I travel on an Australian passport.
Mm-hmm.
I support the Australian rugby team, and mainly because I made a decision that if I wanted to be successful in this country, I needed to immerse myself. Now, yes, I still have, depending on who I'm talking to, strains of a South African accent coming through.
Mm-hmm.
But I made a decision to immerse myself culturally into Australia. So I went out and met Australians. My very first business partner in the mortgage business was a footy player. So that's like, American football, but the Australian version called Australian Rules. He played at a very high level. He actually played professional cricket for Australia. And he was well connected with people in that sporting sense, and Australia is driven by sport. So him and I really got on well. He introduced me to amazing people. In fact, he was also working at a brewery before joining me, and so he knew a lot of nightclub owners. So we had a very mixed bag of clients. But I immersed myself in the culture. I was too old to start learning how to play Australian football, but I ended up playing hockey again, field hockey, that is, grass hockey.
Mm-hmm.
Which is a very big sport in Australia, and Australian team is one of the top teams in the world. So again, culturally, I made myself Australian. Two of my kids were very young when they arrived here, and my son is born in Australia. So, we're very much an Australian family, 21 years on.
Beautiful. So tell them about the podcast.
So Lindsay Adams and I started the podcast. We've been talking for a while. We are great friends. He's been a great mentor to me as a professional speaker. He's actually got an award from the Australian government for services to the global speaking community. And I'm sure when you chat to him next, you'll ask him about his Order of Australia medal in that regard. So Lindsay and I have a network of people around the world and around Australia. And I had this view of excellence. And why excellence? Well, because I don't believe you can ever be perfect. I believe you can be excellent, which is just being the best you can be at whatever you want to do. And so Lindsay and I were talking one day and we went, yeah, we both agree with that definition. Let's strive for excellence, but excellence is just being the best we can be. And let's go and interview people who have a story to tell or have some wisdom to share. And that's how we got to it took us about a year to actually get the first episode recorded. We then recorded 20 episodes, put those up live, but without telling anyone, so that when people started looking at our website, we actually had 20 episodes up and running. We had episode 45 went live on Monday. We've got 58 episodes recorded. So we're about 2 months ahead in our recording right now. And we're getting amazing stories from people, amazing stories of excellence. So just ideas, and people all around the world have been contributing. It's been a fantastic experience, and it showcases what we do, both Lindsay and I, in different ways as speakers, mentors, and coaches.
Perfect. Yeah. I mean, like I said, we just got our 400th episode this Monday. And and now I teach people to make yourself the sponsor. Don't try to get $2 from somebody to sponsor your episode. Sell your own stuff. So that's what I do all the time. So you got a new book coming out, and it's not quite done as this episode's going to drop. But where will they find? Where can they find you, and where can they find the book? And you're going to have. I think you got some freebie for them too, right?
Yeah, oh, absolutely. So there are a few freebies. There is the new book will be available as a download off excellencepodcast.com or at railbricker.com. And it's very simple to get hold of me. I'm pretty much on all the social media, even the latest Clubhouse and the
Which is where we
on
met, by
contact.
the way.
That's where we met, on Clubhouse.
Yeah.
Yes, on talking about podcasts.
Yeah,
So
right.
that was exactly what it was about. And rail at railbricker.com is the easiest. As I said, excellencepodcast.com does have a number of free downloads already for people who want some tips and traps on how to build their businesses better. So there are two up there at the moment. One is 60 questions to ask when you meet people and how you want to build rapport quickly. And one is 7.5 tips for business hacks to make your business more excellent. And the third one, Building Excellence, as an ebook, will be available there shortly.
Beautiful, beautiful. Well, thanks for getting up so darn early. I know it was very early there in Australia, and I really appreciate it. And we like also to hear perspectives from around the world. And you're definitely a world traveler and doing great in the speaking business. So thanks so much for coming on.
Thank you very much. Can I'd like to share a story about paying it forward.
Sure.
Because I think that's what we forget about as entrepreneurs many times in our lives.
Go for it.
So when we started the education business, we bought a building. So again, diving in, we had no idea about property and commercial property, but we wanted to house ourselves. So we bought a 50,000 square foot, 8-story building in downtown Johannesburg. We housed our business in there, and then we got complementary other education businesses to fill the rest of the building. We also built in the basement of the building a little 2-bedroom apartment so that our staff, our cleaning staff, who had to work obviously after hours to clean the place because students were there during the day, didn't have to commute, because at that time was still under apartheid. People would have had to commute an hour and a half to get home. And so it was a challenge. So we built this apartment probably highly illegally, because we weren't allowed to do that. We just did it anyway. And we built this, and we housed one of our staff over there. The second part of that is her son finished school. She came to us and said, look, my son's finished school. He's got a reasonably good year 12, final year graduation, but nothing to get into university. And we said, no problem. We'll give him a scholarship to do one of our programs, our marketing program. I had forgotten about that incident for many years. It was something that happened. I was in my 20s. We did it, and we left it. About 4 years ago, I got an unsolicited, I got a contact from South Africa. A guy tried to connect with me on LinkedIn, and I thought, yeah, he's in a senior marketing role. He was using his African name because that's become the norm. A lot of kids in South Africa, black kids, were given anglicized names because the apartheid government couldn't pronounce their African names, or their real names, should I say. And so I got this LinkedIn connection. I said, sure, he's a young marketing guy in South Africa. And then he sent me a WhatsApp, a LinkedIn message that made me cry.
Wow.
Because he had just been appointed as marketing manager of one of the major networks, the mobile networks in South Africa. And he messaged to thank myself and my partner, because we'd given him the opportunity to do this course 25 years before that.
Oh, my goodness. Yeah. What a beautiful
And
story.
that actually brought tears to my eyes, and it taught me about the principle of paying it forward as a businessman. That sometimes it's not all about the bottom line. You have to watch the bottom line. You have to know your figures. You have to make sure you're making money. But sometimes you just have to do things because they feel right. And those come back in multitudes to help you.
Wow, what a beautiful, beautiful story. And I totally, totally relate. Good for you. Or what'd you say? Good on you.
Then about 2 years after that, I was back in South Africa. It was the 30th anniversary of the business school. The 50th anniversary of the business school, but they'd invited past graduates to come and speak. And I went back to speak to the current MBA group. And they said I could invite some guests from the public, and I invited him over, and he got his mother on the line, who had now retired, and we had a chat and we had a coffee together. It was a really nice
Beautiful.
evening, and it was good to see him and see how the impact we'd made on these students who we didn't really know anything about the business when we started it. But we got so passionate about what we were achieving that passion drove the success of the business.
Wow, that's probably the greatest lesson you've given us today. So thanks so much, Rael, for coming on. It's been great meeting you, and I'm sure we're going to talk again soon. And everybody will go over to excellencepodcast.com and grab those freebies. So thanks so much, man.
Thank you very much, and thank you for having me as a guest on Screw the Commute.
Happy to have you. All right, and tell Lindsay I said hi. All right, everybody, we'll catch y'all in the next